Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today it's time for Rankin' with the Devil. I'm going to be counting down every studio album by Van Halen. As per usual, this list is just my opinions. Everybody has a different take on the VH catalog. I have 7 out of the 12 albums I'm going to be ranking here today, but I do have opinions on all of them, and as always, I'm not going to be including any live albums here, any compilations, EPs, anything like that. Just the core 12 studio albums in their catalog. There's Saint Anger by Metallica, Risk by Megadeth, Forbidden by Black Sabbath. Every band has one of those maligned records in their catalog, and Van Halen are no exception here. Coming in at number 12, in my opinion, the worst VH record has got to be Van Halen III from 1998, marking the only appearance of Extreme's Gary Cherone on lead vocals here, and, the recruitment of Cherone for lead vocals might go down as one of those puzzling decisions, band member replacements in the history of rock music, but, really it shouldn't have, because Cherone is a pretty talented guy, and, has a great voice as well. I just think that the material the band were working with at the time was just not up to par, or anything close to what people were expecting at the time. The ideas were there, I think, but in execution, this album is greatly flawed. Bland riffs, bland lyrics, not enough time to flesh them out, in my opinion, either. So, just in general here, a very uninteresting record from a lost Van Halen. Not quite sure where they stood in the music industry by the late 90s here. So, that said, coming in at number 12, let's go with the confusing Van Halen III. In my opinion, their worst studio effort. My number 11 on the list, 2012's A Different Kind of Truth, marks the return to the studio of David Lee Roth with Van Halen for the first time since 1984, and this record definitely showed that the band still had plenty to offer in the studio, and although the new material really shined here, I definitely akin this record to 13 by Black Sabbath, seeing that it's very much a by-the-book Van Halen record, seemingly drawing influences from some of their past works and, their younger work, their greatest influences, and in that case, it's very paint-by-numbers Van Halen, but nonetheless, some really solid stuff on here. It's enjoyable, but let's just say VH didn't reinvent the wheel with A Different Kind of Truth from 2012. Of course, will be the final Van Halen album as well during the lifetime of Eddie Van Halen, but, in general here, it's enjoyable, but I wouldn't say it's one of their greatest albums or top shelf material or anything like that, but still a very solid farewell album by the band. Moving into the top 10 now, we have 1995's Balance, the final album to feature Sammy Hagar on lead vocals here. Balance is a textbook Van Hagar listen with, a lot of fun listens throughout, such as Can't Stop Loving You, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, right? You have Amsterdam and Not Enough, and despite my love for the Van Hagar era, this album is definitely the most underwhelming of that time period for the band, I think, but still a fun listen nonetheless. Coming in at number 10, kicking us off in the top 10 here, I'm going to go with 1995's Balance, the final studio appearance here by Sammy Hagar on a Van Halen record. Well, I might be the CD guy, but I do have vinyl too. Coming in at number 9, let's go with Diver Down from 1982. This album turned 40 years old last year, and, some might disagree with this album being so low on the list, but, when it comes to the classic years of the DLR era of the band, this album just kind of lacks the same energy and vigor that those other records have, during the classic period of Van Halen with David Lee Roth as the frontman. Of course, pressed for material here, there were 5 cover songs on this record. Also, you have, 3 instrumental tracks and only 4 full-length original songs, but looking at the track listing here, you do have some great stuff like Where Have All the Good Times Gone, Little Guitars, Hang 'Em High, Intruder, Oh Pretty Woman is great, Cathedral, Dancing in the Street, so there is some fun material on here, but in my opinion, it's not one of the strongest releases out of, the early DLR works. Let's go back to Van Hagar here with 1991's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. This album is definitely a grower, in my opinion. It definitely took a few listens for it to grow on me, but, like a lot of the Van Hagar stuff, I tend to gravitate towards it more so, and I really dig standouts on here, like Pound Cake, right? You've got Run Around, Pleasure Dome, Man on a Mission, of course, right now, the classic, Dream is Over, and Top of the World to close things out. Lots of really strong material on here, in my opinion, although it's definitely a step back from the great OU812 in terms of experimentation and the band's sound, but still has a lot to offer, I think, in my opinion, and it's still a fun record. So for my number 8 here, I got to go with 1991's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Next, at number 7, let's go with Women and Children First, and I should say that every album from here on out I would consider to be top shelf Van Halen, so everything going forward is ranked pretty close together in my opinion, and the order could change depending on the day, but the way I'm feeling right now for my number 7, let's go with Women and Children First from 1980. It's just a great fun rockin' album with classic VH creativity here, and some great standouts being The Cradle Will Rock, Everybody Wants Some, Romeo Delight, and Loss of Control. It's the first Van Halen album to feature no cover songs, and it's an extremely strong record to kick off the 80s, in my opinion, by VH. I enjoy it. It's my number 7 here on the list, and like I said, everything from here on out is top shelf material, in my opinion. Possibly a bit controversial to put so close to the top 5 here, but coming in at number 6, I'm going to go with OU812, the follow-up to 5150, and the second album to feature Sammy Hagar on lead vocals here. You know, it's just everything that I love about Van Hagar mixed into one album. It's a great mix of, you know, fun rockin' songs, upbeat songs like that. Got some classic ballads here as well, and witty lyrics. Just a killer follow-up to 5150, in my opinion, and more great work by the band during the Van Hagar era, which, in my opinion, is wickedly underrated, and I really do enjoy just about everything they did with Sammy Hagar, including OU812 coming in at number 6 here on the list. We move on now into the top 5 with my number 5 here. I'm going to go with Van Halen II from 1979, one of the greatest sophomore rock albums of all time in my opinion. VH2 shows that the band were here to stay following their momentous debut a year earlier. It's just a fun, infectious, carefree album that, you know, I really dig that atmosphere with awesome tracks on here like Dance the Night Away, Beautiful Girls, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, and Bottoms Up that really make this a blast to listen to in my opinion. Like I said, it's a killer sophomore record here and a great follow-up to their debut from 1979 here. I gotta go with Van Halen 2. Following that up here on the list with my number 4, I'm gonna go with Fair Warning from 1981, the 4th studio album here by Van Halen, and, you know, I have no idea why this was the lowest selling album of the David Lee Roth era at the time, because this is a great record here, in my opinion. Definitely belongs in the top 5. Definitely has a much darker, brooding atmosphere compared to the first 3 studio albums by Van Halen, but I really dig it here, right? Got some great writing and playing by Eddie Van Halen as well, with some killer tracks that include Mean Street, So This Is Love, Push Comes to Shove, right? Unchained, Hear About It Later, one of my favorite Van Halen tracks. One Foot Out the Door as well as Killer. So there's a lot of really strong material on here that make it a candidate for one of the best VH records of all time. So I have it in the top 5 here, close enough to the top. Again, like I said before, this is a very close ranking, so, you know, depending on the day, this could be higher or lower, but today I have it at number 4. Just great stuff here in 1981 by VH on their 4th studio effort. Top 3 now, and this is where it gets really difficult, but again, the way I'm feeling today here for my number 3, I gotta go with 1984. Now, let me just say right away, my unpopular opinion about this record is I'm not a big fan of Hot for Teacher. I just don't get the hype around that song. I think it's overplayed and a little overrated in my opinion, but nonetheless, the rest of the album is extremely strong in my opinion, and I'd say it's fair to say that outside of their debut, this is their best known record with just classic material on here like Jump, Panama, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs as well, right? You got some killer tracks like I'll Wait, Girl Gone Bad, and House of Pain to close things out. Produced by Ted Templeman. Just great work here by Van Halen, and I really dig it. This would be the final album with David Lee Roth until A Different Kind of Truth from 2012, but he goes out with a banger here. A killer record, makes the top 3 here. Gotta go with 1984. Is this the greatest rock debut of all time? It very well might be. Coming in at number 2 here, we have 1978's Self-Titled by Van Halen, right? Their debut record. I mean, this would set the stage for the rest of their catalog and would be the album that, you know, every album would be measured against as well. Just killer stuff here from the band. Their first studio record, Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me, great cover, Ain't Talking About Love, I'm the One, Jamie's Crying, another one of my favorite Van Halen tracks, right? You got Atomic Punk is a lot of fun, Little Dreamer, On Fire to close things out. Just so many great songs on this record. It very easily could have been my number 1, but, you know, for me, there's just one more Van Halen album that I gravitate towards just a little bit stronger. Not to understate at all how incredible their debut record is. It's a classic for a reason, but if you're a follower of my channel, you probably know what I'm going to say next year. I feel like a broken record at this point, but when it comes to the VH catalog, I'm just more of a Van Hagar guy than I am a fan of the David Lee Roth era as a whole, and I gravitate towards those albums a lot more. So, that said, for my number 1, I gotta go with 5150 here. The first album with Sammy Hagar on lead vocals, an incredible replacement, and I think really did allow the band to reinvent themselves at the time. Of course, Sammy Hagar had a much better voice than David Lee Roth and allowed the band to take different kinds of chances and experiment in the studio in ways that they couldn't with David Lee Roth on lead vocals, right? On top of that, I mean, the material on here is just so strong from top to bottom. It's such a fun listen, right? You got Good Enough, explosive album opener, Why Can't This Be Love is a classic, Dreams, a classic as well, played on classic rock radio all the time. Summer Nights is fun, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, the title track 5150, and Inside to close things out. Just great stuff here by Van Halen, their first studio album with Sammy Hagar on lead vocals, and again, I love Van Hagar, so, you know, don't blame me for putting this at number 1, it's just my opinion. I really enjoy this album, and I say out of every album in their catalog, this is the one that I listen to the most, and, you know, I really do think that the Van Halen catalog is mainly consisted of, you know, really strong records that range from good to great, but at the top of that list, this has to be my number 1. A great album here by the band with Sammy Hagar on lead vocals. So that wraps up Rankin with the Devil, counting down every studio album by Van Halen from worst to best, which should be visible right over here. Hopefully I didn't tick too many people off with this ranking here. I know my order is a bit controversial at times, but if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comments. I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Van Halen record? And let me know your least favorite as well as your thoughts on my ranking. I'd be very interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.